Okay, y'all. I know everyone knows this song. And I know you know there's also a congregational response. So I want everyone singing loud and proud. And if you can follow along with the words in your insert. Here we go.
As Unitarian Universalists, we come from a long line of critical thinkers who questioned the notions of Jesus as the Son of God, the Trinity, original sin, predestination, and the practice of indulgences for the forgiveness of sins. Many of our Unitarian and Universalist forebears were deemed heretics by the Church and enemies of the state during the Protestant Reformation, and were subsequently persecuted or lost their lives in the name of religious freedom. Prior to the Reformation, the heretics in Muslim countries were subject to the Catholic Crusades, while heretics in other parts of Europe were subject to the torture of papal inquisitions. Across Europe and in Salem, Massachusetts, women who practiced herbal medicine or worshipped the goddess were considered heretics and subject to persecution and death in witch trials. Many people today consider humanism the ultimate form of heresy because it is an ethical system that is not based on a belief in God. The word heresy comes from the Greek term heresis, which means to choose. Religious freedom is the freedom to choose what we believe. As a child who grew up in a French Roman Catholic church, I was taught never to question the Bible or the teachings of the church, even if they don't make sense. After Vatican II, parishioners were encouraged to own and study the Bible. I remember when my parents purchased a Bible and how it felt like God had moved into our house when it arrived. It was a French edition with many beautiful, full-page, awe-inspiring pictures. But it was never more than a cherished religious symbol in our home that kept the mortuary cards of deceased loved ones between its pages. When I left the Catholic Church as a young adult, I found spiritual sustenance in the beauty of nature and transcendental meditation. Over time, I longed to be in spiritual community with other people and was delighted to discover my church home in Unitarian Universalism. I remember before becoming a member, I met with my minister and shared my struggle with the notion of free will because of the phrase, once a Catholic, always a Catholic, which had been ingrained in me as a child. The beauty of Unitarian Universalism, she said, is we get to choose what we believe. So I held on to Jesus and left the rest. I was content for quite some time until my call to ministry brought me face to face with the Bible. Most of my colleagues in seminary had some prior relationship with the Bible and were eager to study it in their first semester. I did not, so I took it in my last semester. The challenge came when I had to write a critique on a passage of my choice in the New Testament. I remember sitting in the cafeteria consulting with colleagues on how to write an exegetical paper. They lovingly and collectively said, "You must begin with a question." And all I could hear was my adult voice expressing my childhood fear. "Are you crazy? Do you know what happens to people who question the church's interpretation of the Bible?" My throat closed, my palms were sweaty, and I was squirming uncomfortably in my chair. One gracious colleague sat with me after the others had left to ensure me that I would not be struck by lightning for writing this paper, and noted how many other seminarians were still alive after they had written theirs. She had a point. So I chose my passage, and my questions were fueled by the misogyny evident in the text. Someday I may share that with you all. Now, it's important to note, in my 3 years of seminary, I had very skillfully avoided the biblical reference section. To get the answers to my questions, however, I would have to overcome my visceral fear of questioning religious authority infused in the Bible. So I asked a colleague who was a retired school teacher and public librarian to help me. While I was grateful for the way she calmly introduced me to the reference section, she was clearly in her element, and I was not. It took everything I had not to run out of that door while she was speaking. So we quickly called it a day, and on our next visit, it took 3, I sat white-knuckled at a large table, frozen, while she brought the reference books to me. And once I had a list of the call numbers for the books needed, I was emotionally exhausted and needed a nap. On our 3rd visit, I vividly remember feeling a creeping sense of paralysis coming up from the ground to the top of my head. as we climbed the stairs to the third floor, where all of these books were. And when we stood before the inner sanctum of biblical inquiry, I froze. Unable to partake of the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge, with tears in my eyes, I shook my head and gave my friend the list. I watched as she entered this dark room with motion sensor lights. It's kind of like Moses parting the Red Sea. And like a kid in a candy store, each time she disappeared between the stacks, she emerged with this satisfied grin and a spring in her step with the desired book in her hand. In my emotional state, she appeared unscathed, like Moses returning from the burning bush. I was astonished by her bravery as she piled each book on the desk in front of me. Know that none of this is an exaggeration. When it was time to go, I could not bring myself to touch the books, let alone bring them to my room. So I asked her to open one of the books, place her hand on one page while I placed my hand on the other page. And miraculously, nothing happened. Nobody died, nobody got hurt. It worked so well to desensitize me, we did it to all 12 books. I brought them to my room, wrote my paper, and healed my relationship with the Bible. But I share this story with you because children are so impressionable at a young age. And sometimes we live our whole lives without ever questioning what we were told as children. So I have an exercise for us. In your order of service, there's an index card, and you should have also received from the greeter a golf pencil, little pencil. If you didn't receive this, please raise your hand, and I'll ask our ushers to, quite a few of you. Okay, so we'll give you a minute. So since many of us came from another faith tradition, I want to invite us into a time of reflection and on the religion of your childhood or prior to becoming a Unitarian Universalist, and write down the beliefs you chose to keep on one side of the card and the beliefs you chose to leave behind on the other, while William plays some music for us. Would anyone like to share some of the beliefs that you've kept and the ones you've left?
Just the ones I've kept.
Sure.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Not Jesus as God, but as the prophet and leader that he was. The golden rule, good works, and caring for people far away. I was educated in a school by an order of nuns that had missions in Africa, and I know some of it was a little condescending, but I always thought about the pagan babies. I know it sounds weird, but it meant something to me. It was real to me.
Mm. Yeah.
I am probably one of the very few in this room who was actually raised Unitarian Universalism. And I don't remember any lessons from my childhood, probably because there was no dogma.
Yeah.
At the time. But the one thing I remember is a very funny story. There was a kid in my class who had gone down south to visit relatives and came back and drew a picture of God up in the clouds throwing thunderbolts. And I told him, "You cannot draw that. My daddy says God doesn't exist."
My daddy says.
And the teacher was not impressed.
What I believed was a result of what I had been taught. I believed that the only physical church I could ever enter was Catholic. I was not to go into any other church building at all because something terrible would happen. Many years later, I chose to come into this building, and I did that for a performance that was being done with Bill Staines. So it was quite some time ago. Coming into the building, it was extraordinary. It matched some of the things you were talking about. It was terrifying. And then to walk down where I wanted to sit because I like to be in the front was just as bad. The other thing I was taught was that regarding other children, I was not to play with or associate with any who went to public school, and that included other Catholic children. So, I mean, these are very restrictive things.
Yeah.
And what I can say about that is I now have many friends who have come from many different backgrounds, and it is so much more freeing. So those are my changes.
Thank you. Get you next.
I have a lot of very wild beliefs. I'm barely able to put it into words, but I grew up believing in Christianity whilst I was being raised as a Unitarian Universalist, which is actually quite impressive for my young self. But and nowadays, I believe in a horrifying amalgamation of Baha'ik Ilya with kind of like a modern pagan and also amnestic. I believe in the forces of entropy. It's a bit much.
Nice. Thank you. One more after this. Yeah.
I rejected my grandmother's very judgmental Baptist God. I was raised back there as a very young child, and I was fortunate to have a mother that had rejected that upbringing she got and was always questioning. So that's really what I took, is that God's okay with you questioning, and that we all create the sacred together.
I grew up Unitarian before it was Unitarian Universalist. That happened when I was in high school, but we had lots of lessons. We acted out Bible stories, and we learned about all different religions, and we went to church as a family. I loved it. It was great. We had a lovely community. The thing that I find really interesting is we grew up in Melrose, which was heavily Irish and Italian, lots of Catholics, big families, and so you were either Catholic or Protestant. I think we had one Jewish family in town. And so I wasn't Catholic, so I had to be Protestant. But somehow I figured I was Christian. I can't remember how I absorbed that. But the thing that is really interesting to me, because Rick and I were talking about this at one point, in order to be I was Christian, and that meant I was a good American. I was a good American, and that meant I was Christian. And I didn't consciously know I believed it until later, but when I realized it, I was kind of like, wow, where did that come from? So what has happened with me is that I am basically not interested in religion. I don't think about it. I don't talk about it. I know there are lots of people, it's very important for them to talk about it and think about it. I have zero interest in that. Really, for me, my beliefs are love of community, acceptance of others, being open to new ideas. I think I take people, for the most part, where they are. So it's really, I guess, a lifestyle. I don't really know what it is, but I watch religion go on around me, but I don't really, it goes by me.
Thank you. Real quick, Jim.
So I've become a humanist. I believe we're a product of evolution. I believe we're an obligately social animal. I think that religion has served a purpose for a long time, and that science has given it a lot of trouble because it had all kinds of dogma that didn't make any sense to science. And I think we need a new institution in our society that helps us think about how to live a life and get along with each other.
Thank you. As Unitarian Universalists, we engage in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning and encourage one another towards spiritual growth. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism and want to explore what you believe and why, there will be a 6-session Building Your Own Theology class beginning in February. You'll find the dates in your order of service, and the program is called UU Theology, Meaning and Mystery, The Quest for Truth. Our last reading is Questions of the Heart. There's a question asked by every dawn, a question only the heart can hear. Who are you, and how will you live this day? And we give our answer each day in all we do and in all the choices we make. Our answer is in the way we treat one another, in the courage we must find to face a challenge. It is in our eyes when we choose to look for beauty, and in our hands when we reach out to help someone. It is in our minds when we strive to understand, and in our hearts when we choose to love. It is in all the important questions we ask, and in our journey to find the answers. The person you try to be each day is your answer to the whispered question of the dawn. As you move through life, may you always remember, there is no question the heart can ask that it cannot answer. May it be so.